She walked away from her stall to help a stranger. He was watching from across the market. Hook, standing next to Adieza's fruit stall, told her, in front of 6 other market women and 3 customers who had come to buy oranges, that she was an embarrassment to their association. She said that a woman who spent her days sitting behind piles of osan and pawpaw had no business keeping company with a man who could not even pay his own bus fare. She said it loudly. She wanted every ear in that section of Ugbet Market to hear it. What Ifeoma did not know, what none of them knew, was that the man she was describing owned 4 companies, employed over 900 people, and had more money than everyone in that market combined. He was standing 3 stalls away. He heard every word. Stay with us, my dear friends. What happens when the people who try to pull you down have no idea who they are dealing with? And when the truth comes out, not just about him, but about every single person who chose cruelty over kindness in this story, it will remind you of something you must never forget. No act of goodness is invisible, and no act of cruelty escapes its consequence. If this is your first time here, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And now, let us begin. Act 1. The woman with orange-stained hands. The first thing Adeze Okonkwo did every morning was count her oranges. Not because she did not trust herself. She had arranged them the night before, 20 to a row, 6 rows deep on the low wooden table she had built with her uncle 4 years ago when she first took the stall at Ogbede Market in Enugu. She counted them anyway. It was the kind of ritual that told her the day had begun, that she was here, that the work was real. 43 naira per orange on a good week. 60 if the rain had been unkind to the groves in Enugu and supply came short. She sold perhaps 80 to 100 on a regular Tuesday, more on market days. Less when the women from the northern stalls came in with cheaper produce and undercut everyone by 10 naira apiece. She had learned not to race them to the bottom. Her oranges were sweeter. Her customers knew it. They came back. It was a Wednesday in late November, and the morning air still held the cool of the night in it, that brief gift Enugu gives before the afternoon sun burns it all away. Adiz had arrived at her stall by 6:15, before most of the other sellers, before the generator that powered the lights in the covered section began its daily grumble. She liked the quiet of those first minutes. She liked arranging the pawpaw with both hands, feeling the weight of each one, setting the good ones at the front. She had learned this from her mother, who had learned it from her own mother. You put the best face forward, not because you are hiding anything, because beauty is its own invitation. She was tying the second bundle of garden eggs when Obi Ageli arrived. Obi. They had been friends since primary school in Aka, since the days when they shared one mathematics textbook and passed it between desks during tests. Since the year Adezi's mother was ill and Obi's family sent soup every Thursday for 6 weeks without being asked. That kind of friendship does not need explanation, it simply is. But lately, Obi had been arriving with a specific kind of energy, the kind that came with an agenda. Adiz. She set her bag down on the edge of the table and looked at the stall with an expression that mixed affection with something uncomfortably close to pity. You have been here since 6 again. The oranges don't arrange themselves. I know. Obi sat on the small stool that lived behind the table. Adezi, I spoke with Chinedu last week. Adezi continued tying garden eggs. Which Chinedu? Chinedu Agu. He works at the Federal Mortgage Bank. He is 34. He has his own apartment in Independence Layout. He asked about you. Here we go, Adezi thought. Here is the version of this conversation I have had 15 times. She did not say that. She said, Obi, I am happy. Happy is not a pension. Neither is marrying someone I don't know because he has an apartment. Obi sighed the sigh of a woman who believed she was being patient with a difficult child. I am not saying marry him tomorrow. I am saying meet him. Have a conversation. What is the harm? The harm is that you will tell him I agreed, and then I will have to disappoint him, and then you will be upset with me for a week. Adezi finally looked up. She smiled, the real smile, the one that had been making people feel seen since she was 7 years old. I know how this goes, Obi. Obi pressed her lips together. You are 31. I know how old I am. Your mother calls me every month asking if you have found someone. My mother calls everyone asking that. She called the pastor to ask if the church had any unmarried deacons. Adez moved to the front of the stall and began adjusting the display. I will find someone when I find someone. I am not in a hurry. Obi left 20 minutes later, not entirely satisfied, but not entirely discouraged either. That was the thing about Obi. She never fully gave up on her missions. She simply postponed them. The morning moved the way good mornings do, steadily, with purpose, without drama. The market filled around her. The generator came on at 7:30. 3 regular customers came and went before 8. One of them, an older woman named Mama Chukwuka, who bought pawpaw every week for her grandchildren, staying to talk for 15 minutes about the price of palm oil. Adieze listened fully. She always listened fully. At 9:40, a man came to her stall for the first time. He was not remarkable in the way that remarkable men usually announce themselves. He wore a simple blue kaftan, slightly wrinkled at the sleeve, like a man who had put it on without much thought that morning. He was tall, not unusually, but enough that he had to tilt his head slightly to look at the oranges on the upper tier of her display. He examined them without speaking for a moment. "How much for a dozen?" he asked. 500 naira. He did not negotiate. That surprised her slightly. Most people tried at least once. He paid, she bagged 12 oranges, and he thanked her and turned to go. "They are better cold," she said, before she could decide whether to. "If you have a freezer, 30 minutes the sweetness deepens." He turned back and looked at her, not rudely, just for a beat longer than strangers usually do. "I'll remember that," he said, and then he was gone. She watched him walk away toward the main aisle of the market and thought nothing more of it. She did not know his name. She did not know that he had just signed a Ms. 2.3 billion contract with an agro-processing company in Abuja. She did not know that he had been watching her stall from the entrance of the market for 10 minutes before he walked over. She did not know that the wrinkled kaftan was intentional. She picked up her phone to check if her supplier had confirmed next week's delivery. The morning continued. It happened on a Thursday 11 days later. Adiez had been having a good morning, not exceptional, but the steady kind of good that feels like a reward for showing up consistently. She had sold 41 oranges before 10 o'clock. A woman from the civil service quarters had placed a standing order for 2 crates of pawpaw per week, beginning the following Monday. Small things, real things. She was eating the boiled groundnuts she kept in a small bag under the table when she heard it. The sound came from the far end of the row near the entrance to the covered section, a raised voice female and then a second voice male, cutting through it sharply. In a market, raised voices are not unusual, but there was a quality to this one that made Adizi set her groundnuts down. She leaned to the side to see around the stack of crates to her left. An elderly woman, perhaps 70, perhaps older, dressed in a plain gray blouse and a dark wrapper that had seen many washes, was standing at a provision stall 3 spaces down. She was holding a small plastic bag to her chest. The man behind the stall, a heavyset man in a red singlet whom Adiezi recognized as Benson, known for selling items at confused customer prices, was speaking at her with his finger pointing. "You gave me 500, you gave me 500, and now you are saying you gave me 1,000. What do you think I am? Go away from my stall before I call security." The woman's voice was shaking. "I gave you 1,000 naira. I had it in my hand since this morning. I am not confused." Benson called, not because there was an emergency, but because shouting for security was an effective way to end an argument by embarrassing the other party. People stopped. People looked. The old woman's hands tightened on her plastic bag. Adeye was moving before she had decided to move. She did not think, "This is not my business." She did not think, "I have 42 oranges still to sell today." She thought nothing. Her feet simply went, "Benson." She stopped at the edge of his stall and used the voice she reserved for situations that required calmness first, firmness second. "What is happening here? Auntie, face your stall. This woman is accusing me of stealing her change." "I am not accusing you of stealing," the old woman said. And now Adeze was close enough to see her clearly. Her face was composed in a way that took effort, the composure of someone who had lived long enough to know that being right is not always enough. Her eyes, though, were wet at the corners. "I gave you 1,000. You gave me 300 change. That is wrong. She gave me 500. Adize looked at the old woman. "Mama, what did you buy?" "Tin tomatoes. 2 tins," he said, 250 each. Adize looked at Benson. She kept her voice even. 2 tins at 250 each is 500. If she gave you 1,000, she is owed 500 change, not 300. Benson opened his mouth. "Even if she gave you 500, Adiez continued, not raising her voice, "she is owed nothing back and you gave her 300. That is already wrong in your own version of events." The small crowd that had gathered said nothing, but the math had landed. Benson's eyes shifted. He reached into the small box he used as a till and produced 200 naira. He set it on the edge of the stall without looking at the old woman. The old woman picked it up with steady hands. She did not say thank you to him. She looked at Adiezi instead. "God will bless you," she said quietly. Adiez nodded. She was already thinking about the 2 customers who might have come to her stall in the past 4 minutes while she was here. But the old woman was still standing there, and she was not entirely steady on her feet. The brief standoff with Benson had taken something out of her, the particular exhaustion of having to fight for what should not have required a fight. "Come," Adizi said. "Sit with me, small." She brought Mama Grace, that was the name the woman gave when Adize asked, to her stall and gave her the small stool. She gave her a bottle of cold water from the cooler box and 2 oranges, peeled already because the woman's fingers looked like they might have trouble with the skin. They talked. Mama Grace had come to the market to buy provisions for the week and had gotten lost in the unfamiliar section. She was from Minsuka but had been staying with relatives in Enugu for a medical appointment. She was going back on Friday. She asked Adeze about her business. Daisy told her. "You are not married?" Mama Grace asked, the way older women always ask, not rudely, just as a fact they are gathering. "Not yet, Mama." "You will marry well," the old woman said, with a certainty that was not flattery. "A woman who moves without being asked, that is a rare thing." Daisy smiled. She felt slightly warm at the words and did not examine why. By the time Mama Grace felt strong enough to continue her shopping, Daisy had been away from her stall for nearly 2 hours. She had missed a crate delivery she needed to sign for. Her supplier had called twice and eventually left the crates with a neighbor, which would cost her an extra arrangement fee. She had missed 4 customers she recognized in the crowd who had walked past without stopping because she was not there. The 2 hours had cost her $8,000 in lost sales and the $500 arrangement fee. She returned to her stall, tallied the damage quietly in her head, and began rearranging what was left of the display. It is what it is, she told herself. She needed the help. What Daisy did not see. The man in the blue kaftan, different kaftan today, same wrinkled quality, same quiet shoes, who had been sitting on a bench near the market entrance for the past 90 minutes, reading a newspaper that he had not turned a page of in over an hour. He had watched the whole thing. He had watched her leave her stall without hesitation. He had watched her speak to Benson with calmness instead of anger. He had watched her bring the old woman to her stall, give her water and oranges, sit with her for 2 hours during peak selling time. He had watched her come back to her stall alone without anyone thanking her for the inconvenience, and he had watched her begin working again without complaint. Emeka, he said to himself. Not his name, just a word, a signal he gave himself when something had shifted inside him. He folded the newspaper. He sat for another moment, then he called his mother. She picked up on the second ring. "Emeka, Mama," he paused. "I think I found someone worth knowing." There was a long silence on the other end. And then his mother said, in Igbo, "Tell me about her." The man came back to Daisy's stall on Monday, and on Wednesday, and on the Friday after that. Each time he bought something, oranges or a bunch of plantain or garden eggs he probably did not need. Each time he stayed a few minutes longer than the visit required. He asked her questions that were genuinely curious rather than performative. How she had learned to pick ripe pawpaw by weight alone, whether the market association had fixed the drainage problem near the south entrance, what she thought of the new road construction on Agbani Road. She answered him. She found herself asking him questions too. He said his name was Emeka. He said he worked in agriculture, logistics, distribution, the side of farming that happened after the harvest. He said he was between projects. He said it the way people say things when they have edited the full truth down to something smaller and more manageable. She did not press him. She had not asked for his full biography. She liked that he was interested in things that were not about himself. His name was Chukwuemeka Eze, though she did not know that yet. He was 37 years old. He had built his first trading company at 25, moving yam and cassava from the farms of Benue to processors in Lagos and Port Harcourt, and had scaled it into a group of 4 companies over 12 years. He employed 914 people. He owned 2 houses in Enugu, 1 in Abuja, and an apartment in London that he used perhaps 3 weeks a year. He was staying, for the duration of this particular chapter of his life, in a modest rented room in New Haven, Enugu. Plain furniture, simple kitchen. He had told his personal assistant and his driver to give him 3 weeks without calls unless it was truly urgent. He wore plain clothes. He paid in cash. He had done this before, taken himself out of the frame of his own wealth to see what remained. But he had never done it with someone specific in mind. He was doing it now because of Adeze Okonkwo and 2 hours at a fruit stall. The woman who found out who he was came from an unexpected direction. Ifeoma Okafor was not a bad person in the way that villains in stories are sometimes drawn, all darkness and deliberate malice. She was, anyways, an ordinary woman, hard-working, proud of what she had built, and deeply, unshakably competitive. She ran a fabric shop 2 sections over in the market and had been a member of the Ogbet Market Women's Progressive Association for 8 years, 1 year longer than Adeze. She had noticed Emeka on his 2nd or 3rd visit to Adeze's stall. She had noticed the way he stood, unhurried, with the ease of someone not thinking about time, and something about it had registered as different from the ordinary customers. She had watched for 2 more visits without being obvious about it. On a Tuesday afternoon, while waiting for her own supplier, she had been scrolling through a business news app on her phone when she stopped on a headline, Ease Agro Group secures 2.3B federal contract for cold chain infrastructure in Southeast. There was a photo, a man in a tailored suit at a press conference, young, confident. The caption, Chukwuemeka Eze, CEO, Eze Agro Group. Ifeoma looked at the photo for a long time. She looked at it the way you look at something when your brain is running a comparison it is not yet announced. She zoomed in on the face. She thought about the man who bought oranges on Mondays and Wednesdays. She thought about the way he stood. She saved the article. She did not go to A to Z. That was not her first move. She went to Emeka directly on a Thursday afternoon at a moment she had calculated carefully, when Adaisy had gone to the bathroom and the stall was temporarily unattended. "Good afternoon," she said, appearing at his side as he examined a pawpaw. Her tone was friendly, warm even, the tone of someone with no agenda. "Are you not Emeka? Chukwemeka Eze?" He looked at her. His expression did not change. "Good afternoon. I am Ifeoma. I have a shop in the fabric section. I saw your picture in the newspaper. The federal contract. Congratulations." A silence. Then, "Thank you. You buy a lot of fruit from Adaisy," Ifeoma said, and now the warmth had a thread of something else running through it. "She is a good seller, very hard-working." A pause. "Of course, I don't know if you know. She is looking for a husband. She has been for some time. Her mother is quite worried." Another pause. "I only mention it because you seem like a man who should know who he is dealing with." Emeka set the pawpaw down. He looked at Ifeoma the way a man looks at a thing he has already categorized. "I appreciate the information," he said. His voice was flat, polite, final. Ifeoma understood she had been dismissed. She had the good sense not to push. She smiled, said something light and meaningless, and walked back toward her section of the market. "He is not interested," she told herself on the way back, which means she will not benefit, which means I have nothing to worry about from Adaeze Okonkwo. But something had taken root in her. The particular bitterness of a woman who had tried to position herself advantageously and had been made to feel invisible. It was not a large feeling, but it grew. The following Tuesday, the Ogbet Market Women's Progressive Association held its monthly meeting in the small meeting room above the market management office. 14 women, plastic chairs, a ceiling fan that moved warm air around without cooling it. The agenda: end-of-year contributions, the drainage complaint to the market management, and a brief discussion of the upcoming Christmas sales strategy. Adaeze arrived on time. She sat near the front as she always did. She had a small notebook. The agenda proceeded without incident until the chairwoman, a large confident woman named Mama Ejiki who ran the pepper stall empire at the north entrance, opened the floor for general matters. Ifeoma raised her hand. She spoke for 3 minutes. What she said was this: that she had observed in recent weeks certain behaviors that she felt reflected poorly on the association's reputation. She did not name anyone directly at first. She spoke in the generalized language of concern, the language of someone protecting rather than attacking. She spoke of women who used their market stalls as a venue for personal socializing during trading hours. She spoke of how this sent a message to customers and to the broader market community, and then she turned her head just slightly, just enough, toward Adaeze. "Some of us," she said, "have become so focused on entertaining visitors that we forget why we are here. A woman who sits behind her stall waiting for a man to rescue her is not a businesswoman. She is a liability to those of us who take this work seriously." The room was quiet. Some women looked at their laps. 2 looked at Adaeze. 1, Mama Ejiki, looked at Ifeoma with an expression that was not quite approval. Adaeze felt the heat rise in her chest. She did not move. She did not look away from Ifeoma. "She is talking about Emeka," Adaeze understood. "She has seen us talking, and she has taken something ordinary and made it filthy." She wanted to say something. She had things to say, clear, accurate things. But she also understood that defending herself in this room, in this moment, would make her appear exactly as Ifeoma wanted her to appear. Reactive, emotional, guilty. So she held the heat inside her and said nothing. She did not know that Ifeoma knew who Emeka was. She did not know what Ifeoma had said to him. She could not refute what she did not know. And so she sat with the accusation sitting in the air around her, untouched, uncontested, and watched several women in the room make small, quiet decisions about how they saw her. Outside, from the bench near the market entrance, Emeka had not heard the meeting. He could not have. But when Adaeze came down the stairs 20 minutes later, her face carrying something she was working to smooth, he noticed it immediately. "You are all right?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said. And then, "I'm not fine, but it's not important." That is the thing about her, he thought. She says what is true, even when the full truth is inconvenient. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No." She looked at him. "Actually, not right now. Let me show you something." She walked him to the far end of her stall and showed him a new variety of orange she had sourced from a farm in Udi, smaller than the regular Osan, but twice as sweet. And for the next 20 minutes they talked about oranges. He asked genuine questions. She gave genuine answers. And whatever had happened in that meeting room sat quieter for those 20 minutes. 3 days later, Emeka sat across from Adaeze at her stall during a slow afternoon and said something she had not expected. "I need to tell you something," he said. He looked at his hands first. A thing she had noticed he did when he was ordering his thoughts. "My business has hit some difficulty." She set down the small knife she used to cut test slices for customers. "What kind?" "A deal I was building for the past year. It fell through last week." Some partners pulled funding at the last minute. I've had to let some people go." He paused. "I don't have the same resources I had 6 months ago." Adiz looked at him. She tried to read what was underneath the words, whether this was confession or performance, fact or test, and found that she could not be entirely sure. She noticed she could not be sure, and held that. "Does it change what you want to do?" she asked. "What do you mean? Does losing the deal change where going? What you are building?" He looked at her. "This is not what I prepared for," he thought. "I prepared for sympathy. I prepared for distance. I did not prepare for this." "No," he said. "It doesn't change where I'm going." "Then it's a setback," she said simply, "not a destination." She picked up the knife again. "Emeka, I've had 3 bad weeks this month alone. My supplier raised prices twice. I lost a standing order because the woman found someone who would deliver. 2 of my best customers moved out of Enugu." She glanced at him. "I didn't stop selling oranges." He said nothing for a moment. "Then you make it sound very simple." "It's not simple. It's just, what else do you do?" She tilted her head. "You are not your deal, Emeka. You are what you decide to do after the deal falls." He looked at her for a long, careful moment. "I'm done," he thought. "I have my answer." He thought of his mother's voice on the phone. "Tell me about her." He thought of his father's face in those last months, when the money was gone and the woman who had promised to stay had not. She is nothing like that woman. He almost ended it there. Almost told her everything. He did not yet. He told himself 1 more week, not to test further, but because he wanted to be sure he was doing this right, that he was not rushing, that when he told her, the telling itself would be worthy of who she was. It was a decision he would come to understand later had cost him more than he expected. That evening, Ifeoma stopped by Adaz's stall as she was packing up. Adaz. She stood with her hands clasped, the posture of false consideration. "I just want to say the things I said at the meeting. I was speaking generally. I hope you didn't take it personally." "Which part?" Adiz asked. Her tone was even. "The part about socializing during work hours." Ifeoma waved a hand. "I've seen that man coming around. I just worry. A man who says he's in agriculture but dresses like he's lost. You don't know where people come from, Adiz." "I've heard things." "What things?" Ifeoma's eyes shifted slightly. "Just rumors. That he was seen with another woman. In a hotel near Garki. Someone who knows him said he is not serious." Adaz held very still. The words had landed in the space behind her sternum and were sitting there, heavy and unclear. She did not know if they were true. She did not know if Ifeoma was lying or twisting something real, or simply fabricating entirely. She had no way to know. "Thank you for telling me," Adaz said. She drove home and sat in her kitchen without turning the television on and thought about Emeka for a long time. She did not decide anything, she just thought. The following Monday arrived with a thickness in the air, the kind that comes in December in Enugu when the harmattan is deciding how serious to be. The sky was pale and flat. The oranges on Adaz's table had a thin coat of dust by 8 a.m. that she wiped with a damp cloth every hour. Obi arrived at 10. This time she did not come alone. The man with her was called Nnamdi. He was 36, well-dressed in a checked shirt and dark trousers, and he carried himself with the particular composure of someone who had been told he was a good match and believed it. He sold building materials. He had a car. Obi mentioned this before she mentioned his name. "Obi," Adize said, not moving from behind her table. "This is my workplace." "I know," Obi said. Her tone had the brightness of someone who had prepared for resistance. "I just thought, since you are always here, you could talk for 5 minutes. Nnamdi was passing. "Nnamdi," Adize said. Looking at the man, "I am sure you are a fine person, but I don't receive introductions at my stall. It is not the right place." Nnamdi handled this with more grace than many would have. "I understand," he said. He looked at Obi. "Maybe another time." He nodded to Adaze and turned toward the main aisle. Obi stayed. Her composure had developed a crack in it. "Adaze, what is wrong with you?" "He drove from Gri." "I didn't ask him to drive from Gri. You are throwing away." "Obi." Adaze set down the fruit she was holding. "I know you love me. I know everything you do comes from that place, but bringing a stranger to my stall without warning in front of my customers." She gestured at the 3 women who had slowed their walk nearby, clearly listening. "This is not love. This is embarrassment." Obi's jaw tightened. "Fine." She picked up her bag. "When you are old and alone, remember that I tried." She walked away. Adaze watched her go and felt the complicated weight of loving someone whose help you cannot accept without losing yourself. She turned back to her oranges. A customer appeared. She smiled. She sold. The morning continued. She did not know what was happening on the other side of the market. Ifeoma had made a visit that morning, not to Emeka's bench, not to Adaze's stall, to the man who owned the row of stalls in Adaze's section, Mr. Obiachina, a stocky man in his 50s who collected rent on the first Friday of each month and otherwise left his tenants alone. She had said carefully that she was concerned that one of his tenants, she said a seller in row C, not Adaze's name, had been using the stall for purposes beyond selling. That male visitors had been noted. that the market association had discussed it. She did not fabricate, she referenced the meeting which had genuinely happened. She simply left out the context, the motive, and the fact that she herself had been the source of the complaint. Obiacina was not an unreasonable man, but he was a practical one. He did not want trouble. He valued his tenants who sold without drama. When he saw Adaze near the end of the afternoon, he stopped by. Adaze, he said it, in the mild tone of someone delivering bad news gently. I have been hearing some things. About the stall. About visitors. She went still. What visitors? A man. Coming regularly. The other sellers are talking. He paused. I am not saying anything is happening. I am saying I have heard things. Your lease is up at the end of January. I need to think about renewal. He walked away before she could respond. Adaze stood behind her table and felt the ground shift in a way it had no business shifting. This stall. 4 years. The wooden table she had built with her uncle's hands. The standing order for pawpaw she had just secured last week. All of it suddenly uncertain because of something she had not done, because of words that had traveled from Ifeoma's mouth to Obiacina's ear while she had been minding her own business and selling fruit. She could not disprove what she had not done. She could not argue against rumors she had not heard. She could not point to the conversation in the meeting and say, it started there with that woman. Because she had no proof of the chain. She sat behind her table and looked at the oranges she had counted that morning and felt a slow burning fury that had nowhere to go. The man she told you about, a voice in her said. The other woman she thought of Emeka and the rumors Ifeoma had planted. She thought of Obiacina's quiet threat. Both pieces came from the same direction, she realized, and the direction was Ifeoma. She did not know how much Ifeoma knew. She did not know why Ifeoma had decided she was worth destroying. She only knew that two real things in her life, her stall and whatever was growing between her and this man who bought oranges, were being threatened by someone she had done nothing to. And she had no weapon, because she had no information that afternoon. Emeka came by at his usual time. He sat on the small stool she kept for customers and looked at her face and said nothing for a moment. Then, what happened? She told him. Not the Ifeoma part. She still could not prove that. She told him about Obiacina, about the stall, about the lease. He listened with the full weight of someone who understood what it meant to build something with your hands and have someone else's words threaten it. Adaze. He leaned forward slightly. I have to tell you something. Wait. She stopped him. The anger and the hurt and the exhaustion of the afternoon had pushed something to the surface that she had been holding back. There is something I need to ask you first. He nodded. Someone told me a few days ago that they had seen you with another woman, at a hotel, near Garki. She watched his face. I don't know if it's true. I don't know why they told me, but I need to ask you directly. A silence. He held her gaze. Who told you this? It doesn't matter who. Is it true? No, he said. Not quickly. After a breath, after looking at her properly, no. There is no other woman. I don't know what was seen or what was said, but that is the truth. She looked at his hands. She looked at his face. She had spent 4 years reading market customers. She knew the small movements of people who were constructing a story versus people who were telling one. She was not certain. She could not be certain. But she had been watching Emeka for 6 weeks, and the person she had been watching was not a person who moved like a liar. Okay, she said. Okay? I believe you. She said it steadily. But I need you to understand something. Whatever is happening between us, I am not someone you can be unclear with. I am not asking you for everything at once, but I need what you say to me to be true. It is, he said. Adaze, it is, and there is something I need. His phone rang. He looked at the screen. Something in his face shifted. I'm sorry, he said. I have to take this. Give me 5 minutes? She nodded. He stepped away, phone at his ear, and she watched him walk toward the end of the aisle and watched the way he stood differently when he was on that call. Straighter, more fluent. The wrinkled kaftan was the same, but the person in it was slightly different. She noticed this. She filed it away. She did not yet know what it meant. He came back. I'm sorry. Where were we? You were about to tell me something. He looked at her for a long moment. Tomorrow, he said. Can you come somewhere with me tomorrow evening? Just dinner. I want to show you something, she agreed. The restaurant he chose was not extravagant. This was not an accident. It was a clean, well-run place on Zik Avenue called Ola's Kitchen, the kind of establishment that real Enugu people went to. Good pepper soup, reliable jollof rice, a television mounted in the corner that usually showed football or Nollywood on low volume. They arrived at 6:30. The evening crowd was building, couples, after-work groups, a family near the door with 3 children who were losing interest in behaving. Adaze had worn a blouse she liked, dark green with small white details at the collar, and her hair in the bun she considered her Thursday hair. She did not know why she had thought of it as an occasion requiring her Thursday hair. She had worn it anyway. They ordered. They talked about things that had nothing to do with what had been weighing on the past week. She told him about her mother's insistence on sending ukwa all the way from Nnewi even though ukwa was available in Enugu. He told her about a farm he had visited in Benue where the cassava was being grown in a pattern that maximized irrigation in a way he had never seen outside a research paper. They laughed. This, Adias thought. This is what has been growing. She had been afraid to name it. She had been building the feeling into a shape without giving it a label, because labels meant expectations, and expectations meant disappointment was possible. But sitting across from him now, watching him talk about cassava irrigation with genuine enthusiasm, she let herself understand what she had been trying not to. I like this man very much. The sound came from the television. Not loud, not jarring, just a change in tone from the background noise of a Nollywood film to the distinct register of a news broadcast. Adias, her hair it the way you hear a car horn 2 streets over. Present, registered, filed. She was still looking at Emeka. But then the newsreader said a name, Eze Agro Group CEO Chukwuemeka Eze, who spoke at today's Federal Ministry of Agriculture briefing in Abuja. She heard the name. She processed it. She looked at the television. On the screen was a man in a dark suit at a podium. He was well-groomed. He was confident. He was speaking with the fluency of someone who had done this many times. The caption at the bottom of the screen read, Chukwuemeka Eze, CEO Ezigro Group. The face on the screen was the face of the man sitting across from her. Adizi looked at the television. She looked at the man. She looked at the television again. The room continued around her, the children near the door, the couple behind them laughing at something, and all of it went slightly distant, as if someone had turned the volume of the world down by half. Had gone very still. He was not looking at the television. He was looking at her, and his face, she read it the way she read everything, the way she had always read things, with the full attention of a woman who had been paying careful attention all her life. His face was not performing. It was not calculating the next move. It was waiting. Honestly waiting, with the quiet fear of someone who has been carrying something heavy and is now watching it land. The room came back. Adias looked at him. She held the silence for what felt like a very long time but was probably 12 seconds. Then she said, You have been sitting on that stool behind my table. Her voice was level, not a question. Yes, he said. You bought oranges you did not need, yes. You asked me about my supplier and my customers and my lease, and you already knew what all of those things were worth. I didn't know about your lease, he said quietly. I didn't know about Obiachina. That part was real. I wasn't. Adias, I don't. She said it gently, but with a weight behind it that stopped him. Not here, not like this. She stood up. She picked up her bag. She was not shaking. She noticed this, the steadiness of her own hands, and was grateful for it, and also slightly surprised. She looked at him one more time. You had all of this, and you sat in my market buying oranges and watching me like I was. What? An experiment? She did not wait for the answer. She walked to the door. She was outside and halfway down Zik Avenue before the tears came. Not the dramatic kind, not the falling down kind. Just the quiet kind that a person cries when they find that something they were beginning to trust has a shape they did not expect. She did not go back to get her half-eaten jollof rice. In the corner of the restaurant, Ifeoma sat at a table near the back with a cousin who had invited her for dinner. She had arrived 20 minutes after Adiasi and Emeka by coincidence, genuine coincidence. Because the universe occasionally has a sense of composition. She had recognized both of them when they sat down. She had watched, she had seen Adese's face when the news came on. She had seen her stand and leave. She had expected to feel something like satisfaction. Instead, what came was something muddier, the particular discomfort of getting what you wanted and finding the taste of it thin. She picked up her fork. She did not look at the television again. No one from the restaurant came to congratulate her. No one acknowledged her. The evening went on entirely without her participation. He found a quiet corner of the restaurant. A small table near the back that a waiter cleared for him without being asked. He did not move for 11 minutes. Then he called his mother. She found out, he said. A pause on the other end. His mother's voice came carefully. How? The news, a broadcast. We were at dinner. Another pause. Then, how did she respond? He thought of Adese's hands steady on the table. He thought of those 12 seconds of silence. He thought of what she had said. Not, who are you or how could you, but you sat on that stool, as if the stool was the transgression, as if the intimacy of the ordinary was the thing that had been violated. She walked out, he said. She was Mama. She was not hysterical. She was not shouting. She said, you sat on that stool behind my table. That's what she said. His mother was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer. Emeka, the stall, the stool. To a woman like that, that is where she is real. That is her real place. And you were there under false pretenses. I know. Do you understand what that means to her? I'm beginning to. Go to her. Not tonight. Give her tonight. But go to her and tell her everything. Not the parts that make you look careful and reasonable, but all of it. Your father. What you saw happen. Why you are afraid. She paused. And Emeka, listen to her anger. Don't try to manage it. Just listen. He stayed in the restaurant for another hour. He paid for their uneaten food. He left a generous tip. He came to the market 2 mornings later. Not to her stall, he knew better than to appear at her stall. He sent a message first. I would like to see you, not to explain or defend. Just to be honest with you properly, if you'll allow it. Tell me where, she replied after 2 hours. Come to the market at 6 before the stalls open. I'll be there. He came at 5:50. She was already at her stall, the same as always, counting her oranges. There was a small office, more of a storage room with a table, that the market management used for meetings, which Mama Ejiki had a key to and which she allowed sellers to use for private conversations when needed. Mama Ejiki gave Adaze the key without asking why. They sat across from each other, no oranges on the table, no stall between them. He told her everything. He told her about his father. A good man, a man who had built something real. A man who had lost it all in a bad partnership in 2004. He told her how his mother had left. Not with cruelty. She had not thrown anything or said terrible words. She had simply stopped being there gradually, incrementally, until the day she was simply gone. He told her how his father had died 2 years later in the house of a neighbor because he had no one to notice that he was unwell. I built what I built, he said, and I told myself the first thing I would do before I brought anyone into my life was understand who they were without the money. Because I have watched what money does to people's vision. I have watched it change what they see when they look at you. He looked at his hands. I met someone 6 years ago, a woman I thought I could trust. When I was testing a new branch, deliberately low profile, she left within 3 weeks. Found a man with a better-looking portfolio. Adiz said nothing. She was listening. When I saw you with that old woman in the market, giving her your afternoon, your sales, your stool, your water, I thought, here is someone who doesn't calibrate. She just acts. He paused. I wanted to know if that was real. I still did it wrong. I know that. You could have told me the truth, Adaze said. Yes, from the beginning. I am this person, and I have these fears, and I want to know who you are outside of that context. I would have understood that. I know. Instead, you sat on my stool and let me think you were something you weren't, and I was. She stopped. Something moved through her face. I was beginning to trust you, Emeka. That was real, and you were watching it like it was evidence. The word evidence landed between them and sat there. He did not argue with it. You're right, he said. I treated your trust like data. That was wrong. A silence. The old woman, Adaze said then. Mama Grace. He looked at her. She is your mother, Adaze said. Not a question. He nodded once. The silence after this was longer. Adaze looked at the table. She thought of the old woman's composed face. She thought of what Mama Grace had said. A woman who moves without being asked. That is a rare thing. She thought of how she had felt warm at the words without knowing why. She understood now why. She came before I did, Emeka said. To see you herself, to form her own opinion. And what was her opinion? She said you were genuine. She said she had not met someone like you in a long time. She said she would be proud if you were. He stopped. Adaze looked at him. Her eyes were clear, not cold but not open yet either. The door that had been beginning to open was still there. She could feel it, but she was not yet walking through it. I need time, she said. To decide what I do with all of this. I'm not walking away, but I need time. I know, he said. Take what you need. He stood. He walked to the door. Emeka, she said it before he reached it. He turned. The stall, she said. Obiachina, that came from Ifeoma. He was still. How do you know? Because she was the one who planted the doubt about you too. The hotel, the other woman, it all came from her. She looked at him steadily. I don't know how much she knows about who you are, but she knows something. He looked at her for a long moment. Then, thank you for telling me. He left. Obi came to the stall the next day. She had not called first. That was unusual. She arrived and stood there with the look of someone who had been running a conversation in their head all night and had finally decided to show up for it in person. I heard, she said. Heard what? About the man. Who he is. There is a video. She held out her phone, the business news clip. Emeka at the podium. Adaze. The man buying oranges at your stall is. I know who he is. Obi lowered her phone. She looked at her friend, really looked the way she had not looked in months, maybe years. The way you look when you have been so focused on what you want for someone that you have stopped seeing what they already are. I brought Nanamdi to your stall, Obi said. You did. I called your mother and told her you were wasting time. You did that too. Obi was quiet for a moment, a long moment for Obi, who was rarely quiet. I was so sure I knew what you needed, she said finally. I was so. She stopped, tried again. A daze. I kept looking at your stall and seeing something to escape from. I never once looked at you and thought maybe this is exactly where you want to be. A daze looked at her oldest friend. She let the silence do what it needed to do. You were not wrong that I need someone, she said eventually. You were just wrong about which someone. Obi's eyes filled. She pressed her lips together. I am sorry, she said. I am very sorry. Adiz came around to the front of the table. She put her arms around her oldest friend the way you hold someone when the apology is true, and the love behind it has always been true too, even when it was expressed badly. I know, she said. As for Ifeoma, The thing about markets is that they remember everything. The association meeting had had 14 witnesses. 2 of them had also been in Ola's kitchen the night of the television broadcast, not at the same table but close enough to see. By Thursday afternoon, a version of the complete story had assembled itself among the women of Ogbet Market the way stories do, not through announcement, but through the accumulation of witness detail. Ifeoma people began to understand had known who Emeka was. She had gone to his bench to try to position herself. She had been rejected. She had used the association meeting to punish Adize. She had told Obiachina no one confronted Ifeoma directly, no one needed to. The fabric shop 2 sections over simply became quieter. Customers who had come weekly began coming bi-weekly, then monthly. 2 association members who had always greeted Ifeoma warmly began greeting her correctly, which is to say the minimum required, no more. In a market where your reputation is built on trust, this is a significant punishment. It does not announce itself. It simply accumulates. And Ifeoma, who had always prided herself on being seen, found herself in the peculiar condition of becoming invisible in the place she had worked for 8 years. She did not have the grace to blame herself. But she did eventually become quieter. Mama Grace came on a Saturday. Not Mama Grace, that was the market name. She came as herself. Chidinma Ize, tall and upright in a good blue aso oak and a calm face that Adaze now understood differently. She came to the stall at 11 when the Saturday crowd was its fullest. She looked at the display for a moment, the oranges, the pawpaw, the garden eggs, and Adisby watched her look at it all with the expression of someone seeing a place they had heard a great deal about. "You remember me," Mama Ize said. "Not a question. Yes, Mama, I came as someone else that day. I want to explain. You don't have to. I want to." She folded her hands. "My son, Emeka, he has been carrying the memory of his father's last years since he was 23. I have been watching him carry it. I have been watching him build everything he has built with that weight on his back and make good things with it, but also be afraid." She paused. "When he called me about you, I wanted to see for myself, report back to him. Just to see. What did you see?" "I saw a woman who did not ask what she would receive before she decided to give." Mama Ize looked at her directly. "That is rarer than you think, my daughter." Adize felt the word, "my daughter," settle somewhere in her chest. She did not speak for a moment. There are things I am still deciding," Adize said. "I know, and I want you to understand something." Mama Ize leaned slightly forward. "The decision is yours, fully yours. Not mine. I have already made the same decision my son has made. But mine is not what matters, not the women at the association." She held Adaze's gaze. "Yours. What do you see when you look at him?" Adaze thought about the stool. She thought about the man on the television. Different clothes, different posture, the same face. And then she thought about the man who had sat on her customer's stool and asked her about pawpaw irrigation and listened to her answer with his whole attention. She thought about what he had said in the storage room, "You calibrate. She just acts." She thought, "Is that who he saw? Is that who I am?" And then she thought, "Yes, that is exactly who I am. And he came to my stall for 6 weeks to look at me properly, and that is what he found. I see someone who was afraid," she said, "and did something foolish with the fear, and knows it." Mama Ease looked at her for a long time. Then she smiled. The real smile, unhurried. "That is enough," she said. "That is more than enough." He came on a Tuesday morning, before the market opened. Before the generator, before the first sellers arrived with their crates and their umbrellas and their morning arguments about which row had water access first. He came at 5:45, and Adieze was already there. She had known he would come. Not because he had said so, but because she had been learning to read him for 6 weeks, and this was what she expected, and she was counting oranges in the pale early light. He was wearing an ordinary shirt, no kaftan today. Just a shirt and trousers, the kind a man wears when he is not performing anything. He walked to her stall and stopped at the edge of it and looked at her. She kept counting. 37, 38, Adaze 39. She set the last orange down. She looked up. "Yes?" He walked around the stall. He stood in the space behind the table. Her space, the space she moved in every day. And he looked at her from there. "I have been thinking," he said, "about what you said, about the stool, about being unclear." He paused. "And I think the way I was unclear with you was the most honest thing I have ever done. Because every time I was with you and not telling you the full truth, I was also the most real version of myself I have been in 10 years. And that's a strange thing to say, but it's true." She was listening. "I own companies," he said. "I employ people. I have money that I didn't have at 25 and will probably have more of at 50. None of that is who I am when I am at my best." He looked at her. "At my best, I am someone who sits on a stool at a fruit stall in Ogbet Market and listens to a woman talk about the sweetness of different orange varieties with his complete attention." He paused. "I want to be that person again, for a very long time." Adaze looked at him. He reached into his shirt pocket and took out a ring. Not a large ring, a simple gold band with a small stone that caught the early light. The kind of ring chosen not to impress but to last. He did not go to one knee. He stood in her space behind her table and held it out. Adaze Okonkwo, will you marry me? The market was empty around them. The first birds were audible. Somewhere in the covered section, a cartwheel squeaked as an early arrival pushed their goods inside. She looked at the ring. She looked at him. She looked at the wooden table her uncle had helped her build. She said, I have 2 conditions. His eyebrows moved slightly. Go ahead. This stall is mine. Wherever we live, whatever happens, I keep this stall. I keep these oranges. This is my work. Yes, he said immediately. I would never ask you otherwise. And the second thing, she held his gaze. When we have disagreements, and we will, you don't manage me. You don't prepare responses or calculate. You just tell me what is true, even if it's hard. He looked at her for a long moment. Yes, he said, that I can do, that I want to do. She looked at the ring for one more second, then she extended her hand. He placed the ring on her finger. It fit. She noticed this, the small dignity of a ring chosen by someone paying attention. She looked at her hand, then at him. Your oranges are still sweet cold, she said. He laughed, a real laugh, unguarded, the kind that had probably not come easily in years. She laughed too. The market began to wake up around them. The wedding was in February when the harmattan was softening towards something gentler. Not a large wedding. They had both agreed on that without needing to discuss it extensively. 300 guests, because some things in Igbo life are non-negotiable, but quiet by the standards of what Emeka could have arranged if he had wanted to. Mama Eza sat in the front row in a silver jewel that caught the light every time she moved. She did not cry at the entrance of her son. She cried at the entrance of Adaeze, specifically at the moment Adaeze walked through the door in a dress she had chosen herself. Ivory, with small orange embroidery at the hem, a detail she had requested and the tailor had executed beautifully, and looked across the room at Emeka and did not rush. She walked at her own pace. She always did. Obi stood at Adaeze's shoulder throughout. She had been the one to help tie the jewel that morning. She had not given advice. She had simply shown up early and been useful with her hands, and let that be the apology the morning did not have room for in words. Namdi, the man from Independence Layout who had driven from Garay, attended with a woman he had been seeing since October. He seemed happy. He sent a card that said, Congratulations, in neat handwriting. Adaeze appreciated this. The stall at Ogbet Market reopened on the Thursday after the wedding. Adaeze arrived at 6:15. She counted her oranges, 42 a row, 6 rows deep. She set the best pawpaw at the front. She wiped the table with the cloth that had been her mother's. On the table next to the scale was a small framed photograph, the kind you take on a phone and print afterward, nothing expensive. In it, a man in a wrinkled kaftan was sitting on a small customer's stool, holding an orange, looking at the camera with an expression of uncalculated happiness. She had placed it there herself. That is who he was, the photograph said, to anyone who cared to look. That is who he chose to be, and that is who I chose to love. Moral lesson, my dear friends. There is a lesson in this story that I want to sit with you for a moment. We live in a world that tells us to measure people by what they carry, by the weight of their bank accounts, by the size of their houses, by the label on their clothes. We are taught to assess, to evaluate, to check credentials before we allow someone into our hearts, and I understand why. The world has given us enough reasons to be careful. But Adaeze Okonkwo did not do this. She moved without being asked. She gave without calculating what she would receive. She chose a man not because of what he had, but because of how he listened, because of the quality of his attention when he sat on that small stool and looked at her fully. And the extraordinary thing, the thing I want you to carry with you after this story ends, is that this is exactly why she was chosen in return. The person worth finding is not the person with the longest list of credentials. It is the person whose character does not change when the credentials are removed. And the love worth keeping is not the love that arrives because of what you have. It is the love that stays because of who you are. Now I want to hear from you, my beloved friends. Emeka loved Adaeze, we can see that clearly. But do you think he was right to test her? Or do you believe that true love requires trust from the very beginning, and that any test, however well-intentioned, is a betrayal of the very thing it is trying to protect? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded today that who you are, not what you own, not what you earn, not what others say about you, is the thing that truly cannot be taken. We will see you in the next story. God bless you all.